My name is Danielle Campbell, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank you guys for joining us tonight as we begin our conversation or our trigger warning conversation. Um, when we talk about the Second Amendment, the conversation often ends where it should just begin. Gun rights and mental health are two of the most polarizing topics in America, each loaded with stigma, fear, and misinformation. But if we're serious about protecting lives and liberties, we have to get serious about the conversations that we are not having. This dialogue is not about assigning blame, it's about breaking silence. Trigger warning is a necessary invitation into the uncomfortable space where mental health and the right to bear arms intersect. It's about confronting the narratives that paint all gun owners with a broad brush or reduce mental health to a soundbite after a tragedy. It's about asking harder questions. How do we support veterans and survivors struggling in silence? What does true responsibility look like for individuals, for communities, as well as policymakers? And how do we create systems that prevent harm without criminalizing our pain? There are no easy answers to this, but there is a need for honest human conversation, especially ones that we've been taught to avoid. This is going to be that conversation. So without no further ado, I'll introduce to you guys Pernell Bush of No Limit Counseling and Education Services.
How's everyone doing? First and foremost, thank you so much, guys, for having me here today. As you stated, this is a very important conversation for us all to have. So before we begin, just understand that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So this is an opportunity for us all to have a very critical conversation. And for many of us who are pro two-way individuals, who are firearm owners, who are responsible with our firearms, oftentimes, as Danielle said, we all get blanketed together. And as a licensed clinical therapist, I hear this conversation a lot within my colleagues about, oh, well, we should just disband all firearms. I'm like, no, that's not it at all. We need to have a crucial, very clear, very, robust conversation about what this looked like for our communities. So let me jump right on in. Give me a second here to pull this up. All right, present. All right. So let's jump right on in here. So with firearms, mental health, and suicide, oftentimes, I oftentimes be very weary about speaking about suicide because that's often the conversation that's around firearms. But for me, my goal tonight is to talk about how our mental health, being aware of our mental health as responsible firearm owners is very important. Now, with that being said, many of us know and have known individuals, I've heard stories of individuals who may have completed or taken their own lives. So we're going to talk about that briefly, about signs and symptoms, and then how we can, as a community, can be on the lookout for one another, watching each other six, and we'll go from there. All right. So once again, I'm Pernell Bush. I'm also a United States Marine Corps veteran. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed psychotherapist, and I'm the managing partner of No Limit Counseling and Education. So I always like to start off with just taking a brief moment of silence for those who are not with us today. So if you bear with me and give us about 5 seconds there, please. Thank you. So let's talk about the tough part, right? So suicide, right? Oftentimes we talk about firearm, we talk about suicide, but once again, it's about creating awareness so we can be on the lookout for our brothers and sisters in our communities. Whether we're on the range, whether we are in our communities, where we're just meeting with them out and about and know the conversation. So suicide is being intentional about causing harm to oneself and causing your own death. So over 700,000 people die by suicide each year globally. And Sabash, if you can, I see some people are in the chat. So just in case anyone has any questions, if you can fill those questions for me, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Oftentimes, when we're talking about those who may have completed suicide, they may or may not be mental health diagnoses, such as depression, anxiety, or also they may have co-occurring diagnosis, which is a mental health disorder with substance use or some trauma or loss. right? So, oftentimes for me, when people walk into my office, I am very intentional about paying attention to what they may be coming in for and helping them with the proper diagnosis if there is one. Like just the other day, I had a young man come to my office, call me young man, a 35-year-old white male come to my office who is experiencing a lot of just extreme life losses. So he's what I said, adjustment disorder at this time with depressed-like symptoms. And one thing he did come to my office, he said, "Hey, look, I want to go to the range, but I don't trust myself right now." And him having that conversation and saying, "I don't trust myself going to the range because I know I'll be there anger, think about everything else I'm experiencing." So for him, he's like, "I know I'm depressed." I'm like, "Well, I don't really see depression right now, but you are going through what we call adjustment disorder with symptoms of depression. And it's good that you're aware that going onto the range right now may not be the best for you." So that day, we're able to put together a safety plan for him to reach out to those within his community, those that he trusts, right? But that's our role as therapists and providers, right? He said he was afraid to go to any other therapist because he felt like if he had told them he was afraid to go to the range, that they would probably try to Baker at them or try to coerce him to saying that you want to hurt yourself or hurt others. He's like, "No, I just don't want to. I just know I shouldn't go right now." And he felt safe by disclosing that with me, knowing I wouldn't say, "Hey, you should get Baker at it," or something is wrong with you. Right? So some of the warning signs, though. So for first, you warning signs is verbal cues. Rarely do we hear anybody, individuals say they're going to take their lives or they're going to say, "I'm going to kill myself." Rarely do we hear that. You might hear something that it just sounds very like common language. Like, "Man, I wish I did. I wish I wasn't here anymore. I can't take this anymore." So those are sometimes you might want to explore that with the individual. Now, for me, I'm very big about talking the difference between suicide ideation, suicidal plans. Right? Suicidal ideation is thoughts. You having these thoughts about suicide, which is very common for many of us. But I say just because you have a thought does not mean that you are really ready to take your life. So let's have that conversation. If you're having these internal dialogues or telling you things like that. Now, individuals say they have a suicidal plan or suicide intentions. Then we come together and understand what's the next course of action that maybe have to take place from there. So other things, change of behaviors, withdrawing from social activities, giving away possessions. Now, like I said, the young man that just came to my office last week, they say, "Hey, I don't want to go to the range and shoot." I said, "Well, okay, you may not want to go to the range and shoot, but is there anyone that's in your gun club that you could just reach out to, and maybe you could just help, have conversations, or maybe be a part of planning committees, or if you do go to the range, maybe you're not the one shooting, and you may make someone aware, like, 'Hey, I don't want to shoot today. Make sure I don't get to the range and shoot. I just want to be amongst everyone.'" Right? So creating those communities so he doesn't become socially withdrawn. If you see individuals giving away prized possessions or things that they're like, "Hey, I don't want these things anymore. Here you go." Right. So we want to be very pay attention to those type of behaviors, and then sometimes they're very subtle. And I have had individuals who feel guilty if they have lost individuals because they're like, "I should have known." And I say, well, we make it seem like it's going to be very big or broad things that you're going to see. Sometimes it's very subtle. So it's going to be a challenge at times to recognize these things are happening. But the best thing I can teach you how to do is how to have those questions, how to create the space for the person to feel safe to come in and speak with you. So mood indicators, so extreme mood swings or persistent sadness, increasing substance use. Substance use is something that can be missed, especially with alcohol. Alcohol and marijuana. Now, marijuana is two of the ones now. Like I say, is very prevalent. Um, because we make it social, right? You go to a happy hour, or we have nightcaps, or with marijuana now, there's really no standard with it. But if you see someone who may utilize those substances and it's like it has increased, we might want to try to be aware of that. And then even for yourself, you recognize, like for me, I know when I'm in a state to where I'm feeling some social, emotional, psychological challenges, I know I stay away from alcohol or any other substance. That's very intentional of me. But I know I'm at a place I'm very different than most people because of my training and my background. And I'm like, well, because I want to go have a drink because it's easy to do. I'm like, that's not what you need right now, P. And we have to become that self-aware individually. But we talk about the ones that we may interact with. If you see them having a persistent increase in substance use or mood swings, maybe engage in that conversation. So how to help and support. listen and communicate. Encourage open conversations about feelings and validating feelings is a big thing that people say now, right? I wouldn't say validate, but I will say it's not the time to try to scrutinize what someone is feeling when they're in the dark space, right? Or try to give them some other language like, well, maybe it ain't that bad. Like just sit with them in that moment. And the question I always tell people to ask someone if someone comes to you, like Mike, if I come to you and I say I need to talk to you, I say the question you should ask me first is, hey, do you want me to listen or do you want my insight? If you ask that question first, and that person's like, man, I just need somebody to listen to me. Then it just should be a space that you create and just listen. Hey, here you go. Here you go. I got the capacity to do that for you. Come on. But they say they want your insight. Then that's when you say they're open to receiving their thoughts and your worldview or your view about what they may be experiencing. Encourage professional help. Once again, I know the challenges in my field. Many mental health professionals, they look at gun ownership as this shouldn't be happening, or they don't believe in it. And once again, I am ostracized oftentimes in my field. They look at me like, wait, how can you be okay with that? I'm like, well, I grew up around firearms. I'm United States military, Marine. I say firearms don't hurt people, but we have to provide to give them the assistance. They shouldn't be afraid to come into your office and say, hey, man, I went to the range and shoot. And you be like, oh, why are you at the range? What's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with someone who utilizes the range in a very constructive way. Be there if you can. Now, when I say be there if you can, be there if you have capacity. The reason I say that is that oftentimes we want to be there, but if you don't have the capacity, you have to communicate that. One of the worst things that we can do is say, hey, I can be there for you, and then we fall off the map. Even if you have to let them know, hey, listen, man, I want to be able to sit with you. I have about 30 minutes. I want to dedicate this 30 minutes to you. Can we do that? So if you can't be there, stay with them if they are in immediate distress, and then follow up regularly, just show support. I tell people I'm probably the king of 15-minute calls, 10 to 15-minute calls, call people to see how you're doing. Hey, checking in on you. All right, bro. Just want to make sure you're good. And always feel free to reach out. And I'll definitely pick up if I can. If not, I'll get back to you. So let's get into the benefits of firing firearms, right? So it has so many potential benefits for mental health and stress relief, although important to approach this activity responsibly. All right. So mindfulness. We also talk to our clients about grounding and how to be present in the moment. To me, there is no other activity like firing firearms that you got to be present. You're right there, right? You're zeroing in on your target. You're controlling your breathing. So right now, instead of probably thinking about all the stressors that we got going on in our life or all the things that could have went should have went a different way that you want, you're right present in the moment. So that concentration, that focus. Discipline and routine, right? We all understand what it feels like to go and learning how to squeeze the trigger, learning how not to just pull it and jerk it and being there day in and day out, learning how to, for lack of a better term, manipulate this weapon to the best of our ability, right? So engage in regular shooting practices can create structure, routine, which can help for mental health stability. A sense of accomplishment, right? When we see an improvement of our shooting skills, it can provide a sense of achievement and boost self-esteem, which may be beneficial for our mental health. Stress relief. The act of shooting can serve as an outlet for frustration, stress, provide a way to channel negative emotions in a controlled environment, right? So understanding how having firearms or going to the range or, making sure that we're responsible gun owners can actually help us reduce the stress that we have in this life and release the stress when we are actually out in the range with our gun clubs. Social interaction. Participating in shooting sports or clubs can foster social connection, reduce feelings of isolation, and enhance social support networks. So recognize when it may not be appropriate to engage in shooting firearms is crucial for safety and well-being. As I stated when I had the young man come into my office last week who stated, hey, look, I know right now I shouldn't go to the range. To me, that was beautiful because he was self-aware. He was self-aware enough, like, I don't need to go to the range and shoot. But he said that was his main outlet. But because of what he's experiencing and all the losses that is occurring in his life right now, he was just looking for another way to relieve this and release this. And this is his second time trying to see a provider. And he said I was the first one that made him feel welcome to speak about it in an open way that he didn't feel judged or scrutinized. So here are some social emotional signs that could indicate it's not the best time to hit the range. When you're angry or frustrated. So if you feel overwhelmed with anger or frustration, shooting may not be a safe outlet, and it can lead to impulsive or reckless behaviors. So we have to be, once again, it's going to be a lot of self-awareness, understanding our own emotional and physiological responses to what we may be experiencing in our current life. Feelings of hopelessness. So feelings of deep sadness or hopelessness may affect your ability to safely handle firearms and engage in the activity responsive. Isolation or withdrawal. If you're feeling socially isolated or disconnected from others, it may be a sign that you may not be in a good mental state for engaging in group activities like shooting. So once again, but we don't want individuals to say, oh, well, I just shouldn't go around people. No, maybe we have to find another way to socially engage. And once again, even if you're not the one on the range with your firearm, maybe say, hey, I just want to come out and help today, do some dry runs with individuals that may need it, help individuals that may need help load the mats, but I won't be shooting because at this time I may not be in a good space. Impulsivity. A tendency towards impulsive decision or actions can increase the risk of accidents when handling firearms. Well, how am I doing on time? See, spare through those. So let's recap. When we talk about suicidal ideations, thoughts, and plans, verbal cues, talking about feelings of hopeless or worthlessness, expressing desires to escape pain or suffering, or mentioning being a burden to others. Changing behaviors, withdrawal from social activities and relationships, increasing substance use, and reckless or self-destructive behaviors. So once again, these are things you should be on the lookout for individuals that are within your social circles, and even be aware of these things that you are experiencing internally with yourself. Expressing despair, talking about feeling trapped or having no way out, express feeling of emptiness or emotional numbness. And we're talking about mood swings, persistent sadness or depression-like symptoms, and feelings of agitation and anxiety. All right. So with that being said, guys, as I stated, for us in this community, we have to be on watch out for one another, have to be on the lookout for one another, but also we have to be self-aware of ourselves and those around us. When it comes to mental health and firearm and firearm usage and responsible gun ownership, it is all right. And I really truly believe that if we understand our own physiological responses and our social emotional well-being, this is something that we can engage in a healthy way. And for me as a mental health provider, it is my goal to bridge the gap between the mental health community and the 2A community. So with that said, I appreciate you all. If you have any questions, wait till after Mike speak, and then me and him will answer all the questions we can together.
Thank you so much for providing us with that information, Pernell. And as we transition, I want to give a brief introduction to Michael Soldini. Michael is a third generation firearms industry professional and the founder of Walk the Talk America. Walk the Talk America is a nonprofit organization dedicated to bridging the gap between mental health and responsible gun ownership. Known by many as the most ungunned gun guy, Soldini has 20 years of experience in the firearms industry, having imported and cultivated multiple successful firearms brands in the United States. In 2018, following a pivotal conversation about the recurrent blame placed on mental health after a mass shooting, Soldini recognized the need for proactive collaboration between the firearms industry and mental health professionals. This realization led to the creation of Walk the Talk America, aiming to foster open dialogue, education, and resources to address mental health issues within the gun owning community. And without further ado, the floor is yours, Michael.
Thank you for having me. And Pernell, that was awesome. Everything you said resonates so much in the Walk the Talk America world, right? My name is Mike Sedini. I'm the founder of Walk the Talk America. I have a little slideshow here. Let me cue it up for you. And folks, how do I get it to where it's the big screen, or can you just see it as is?
So Mike, if you want to, there's a little box down, like you go to the bottom, bottom, that go over one, go to your, right there, hit that one.
Yep.
And it should present, make it big. There you go.
Everyone can tell how much I like sharing screens and slideshows. But anyways, all right. So Walk Talk America, what is it that we do? This is an organization that I founded in 2018. You know, as she said, that I'm known as the ungun gun guy. I did not give myself that nickname. How I got that name is I grew up in two places where you did not have access to a firearm. The only people that had access to a firearm were either gangsters, wannabe gangsters, or police, right? I grew up in New Jersey and I grew up in San Francisco, probably two of the worst places you could grow up if you're into firearms. Having said that, that kind of actually helped me when I got into the firearms industry. I got into nepotism. I recommend everybody do that. If you get that opportunity, it's a perfect way to get into a career. But so having said that, when I first got into the firearms industry, I was like, wow, I'm nothing like these people. But I adapted really quickly. When I first got into the industry, I didn't even understand like the difference between an AR and say a machine gun. I was smart enough not to like say something like, you don't act like a gun guy. But that came to help me when I started Walk the Talk America years later, because it's a way that I can relate to non-gun people and explain things in a way without getting emotional or triggered by any of their comments, meeting them where they're at and understanding the pain. I don't think anyone's really anti-gun. I honestly think most people just don't want to see people die. And a lot of people are gun ignorant, so they blame the gun. And sometimes the gun community has a tough time explaining things and adjusting to how they're feeling. One of the issues, though, I think, though, going back to it, is that for years, the gun industry has never, ever really had our own solutions to these problems. We've always kind of said it's a mental health issue, right? And that's how Walk the Talk was founded. But before I get into that really quick, I want to talk about why suicide hits home for me. In 2009, the president of my company, who was also one of my best friends, took his life with a firearm. One of ours, actually. He went to the office. He had a really bad night, went to the office and took his own life. And I truly believe that he did that because he believed, as a president of a gun company, he could not get help. And one of the things that scares me the most about that situation is I was playing basketball with him right before I saw him last. And he asked me if I had made a bunch of reservations to go on trips that we had planned together. And I hadn't. I just kind of smiled and I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll get to that as soon as I get home. And I remember him saying, if we're not staying in the same hotel, I'm gonna be pissed at you, right? So he's making future plans. And the reason why I bring that up is because, you know, I work a lot with behavioral health and everyone always talks about signs. Sometimes there is no signs. This is one of the happiest guys I knew. We had a mutual friend take their life one time, and I remember him saying, suicide is the coward's way out. So when someone tells you that suicide is the coward's way out, that's the last person in the world that you think would ever take their life. So I guess I'm here to say is, I think we just constantly need to be on the lookout for each other, constantly let people know that there's resources out there and not feel like necessarily everything has an indicator, because sometimes it doesn't. But I always wanted to do something in this space, but I never knew exactly how to do it, especially after Bill's death. In 2018, I was in Louisiana celebrating with my national sales manager, like a big deal that we had just closed with one of the massive distributors there. And we invited a stranger that we met at the bar to sit down at this really crowded restaurant and have dinner with us because she was by herself. And I remember she asked one question and it changed my life completely. She was like, okay, what happens during a mass shooting? I said, well, everybody blames us. We blame mental health, and then nothing ever happens. And she asked one question. She said, well, if you can't, there are certain things you can't work with the mental health community on because of restriction and things like that that you don't believe in. How do you work with the mental health community to find things that you can agree upon that would help gun owners? And I became obsessed with that question. And my national sales manager, I'm not gonna lie, we were like 11 vodka sodas in, like literally turns and he's like, yeah, man, you should donate $1 a gun to mental health. And at the time, I owned a huge importer that imported 60 to 80,000 guns a year, and I only had 3 brands. I had those brands in particular, but we didn't sell to any law enforcement or any military contracts. Like the guns that I brought in went strictly to civilians. And one thing I had noticed about the firearms industry is that we were really good with vets, right? We were really good with vets. But once it got through vets and first responders, it's like we stopped talking about suicide. And I'm in Vegas right now. You know, everybody knows the Mandalay Bay, this down the street. That night we lost 59 people to that horrible tragedy. We lose 74 people a day to suicide by firearm. So that's vets, first responders, and just regular gun people. And I was like, why doesn't the firearms industry do anything about the rest of the people? Like, why don't we draw attention to that? And I just think it's because historically we've always been blamed for things like we have blood on our hands, the gun caused this. And I think it just made us get defensive to where we didn't look to get creative to figure out how to help people. But I'm not going to lie. When I first got into this, I honestly thought that I would just donate money to mental health. I wanted to kind of take the big pharma way out. Like I was just like, if I go raise money in the gun industry and we hand it to mental health because they have the answers and they have the outreach, then we'll stop all these things. We'll stop the mass shootings. We'll stop the suicide. You know, we just got to fund them because Purnell, as you know, like many people that work in behavioral health, cutbacks, always losing money, not having the money to do this, not having the money to do that. I thought we could just fix that by kind of buying our way out of it. And I was very wrong about that, right? But that was also a blessing in disguise because it forced me to look at the firearms industry and say, okay, like what are the things we can do? How can we start relating to behavioral health? How can we educate them? And then I said, well, I wonder if there's anybody else doing this in this space. And I wanted a place that was apolitical to where you didn't, you know, politics didn't come into this. It didn't come into play. Just because I knew so many gun owners from all walks of life. We're not this like monolithic group that all thinks the same. Now, you know, people can make an argument. The majority of the firearms industry is center right, but nowadays can't make that argument anymore. Firearms industry is for everybody. The Second Amendment is for everybody. So I started to look at what is something that we can do that can start getting gun owners to think that guns and mental health aren't mutually exclusive and they can go together. So the very first thing that I did is I started putting free and anonymous mental health screenings because I had partnered with Mental Health America in the boxes of all of my firearms. That's the 60 to 80,000 guns. And I remember having a meeting with my team and thank God I had foreign manufacturers because I don't think they understood like the line I was walking up to, especially in the United States, when it comes to this conversation around mental health, and especially in 2018. They just don't have the Second Amendment in places like Argentina, you know, like to where like they understood like, hey, helping our customers mentally is probably the best thing you could do. So when I explained to them that these are free and anonymous mental health screenings and I wanted to put them in the boxes of their guns, they were like, do it. But I turned around and told the people in my office, I don't know if we're going to piss off the NRA. I don't know if we're going to upset NSSF. I don't even know if we're going to make our customers angry that we're broaching this subject. They might think we're blaming the gun. And it was the complete opposite. We were getting calls at the office every day where people were saying like, I just bought a Bursa and you have this card in the box and I want to thank you. Like, thank you for doing this. And people would actually call the office and talk to the people that answer the phones and share like suicide loss stories or personal stories. So I knew I was on to something. So the next step of that is after 6 months of not getting in trouble by anybody or no one saying a word, I started to approach other gun companies like High Point, Arms Corps, Ruger, right? And when I would tell them like, hey, like I want you to put this in the box, and they're like, what is it? Free and anonymous mental health screenings. We need our customers to stay mentally healthy, right? And everyone was like, damn, like I'm surprised that no one ever thought of that before. And trust me, I'm surprised that I thought of that now too, and I'm shocked that we hadn't thought about that before. But it was the first time that the industry kind of like stood up and said, okay, here's what we're doing. And it was a great thing because it was the first time that I could actually like walk into places that historically were considered enemy territory, right? Like people that were anti-gun, and talk about the things that the gun industry is starting to do. Our next program that we kicked off, because I understood that there was a bridge that needed to be gapped between the behavioral health and the firearms industry, was we created the first cultural competence course for mental health clinicians to learn about gun culture and get CEU credits for it. So, you know, we present all the information on Walk Talk America that we present for every gun owner, for every mental health clinician. Everything that we do is absolutely free. We are only funded by the firearms industry. We don't have government grants. We don't get any outside funding. We are funded by gun manufacturers and gun distributors and two-way culture, right? Donations from regular gun owners that believe in the second. But we created the first, basically no compromise on rights, mental health organization that gave gun owners the opportunity to be part of the conversation, talk about solutions, and not have to feel dirty like when you walk up onto a group of people talking about a mass shooting or suicide. So it's something I'm very proud of, and as 2A people, I think you'll be very proud of the organization. This is an actual quote from back in the day, like when I first started, because you look at the trajectory of Walk Talk America, and when I first started this to where it is now, it's completely different. And I have a bunch of different board members. And if you ask the board members, like, what's the most important thing that Walk the Talk America does? I think you'd get 16 different answers, to be honest. You know, so I'm really proud of that. I like to think of us as having something for every negative outcome of firearms. So whether someone wants to talk about negligence and responsibility, we have programs for that. If somebody wants to talk about mass shootings, you know, we have an answer to where we think that we can help people, because we truly believe that that everything should have an answer. So you want to talk about inner city violence? We have a program for that that's called Kids to Kings. It's immensely popular and really effective. But I wanted to be the person that walked into those rooms where people said they're going to hate you because you're a gun guy, and those people would walk out and say, damn, like, I don't even like guns, but I love what these people are doing. I always try to say to people, like when I talk, I'm giving speeches, I don't need the crowd when I'm done with this to be pro-gun. I certainly hope you don't become anti-gun, because I'm doing something really wrong, but I need you to be pro-understanding. And I think that communication is where it lies. And I think we've done a horrible job at it, but I think we're getting so much better now. But anyways, when I first started it, that goes back to I just wanted to throw money at it, and it was takes a lot more than that. You got to start building grassroots, and it's hard work and it takes time. But we were up for that challenge. This is the why. A lot of people always ask me, you know, why do you focus on the guns? And I'm like, because I'm from the gun industry. Like if I worked in pharmaceuticals or worked in rope, I mean, I probably would pay this much attention to it. But it's the only thing I know that where we can have an impact. When I first started, I really wanted this organization to focus on mass shootings and then suicides, but it was behavioral health that pushed me back towards suicide. And at first I was like, make it make sense for me, because I want to stop mass shootings. And I remember having conversations with some of the most brilliant researchers and epidemiologists in the country that were giving me the time. And they were like, stick to suicide, get upstream to prevent the unpredictable. And maybe you cast that wide net and you catch that mass shooter early enough to where they never end up doing that. And I truly believe that even mass shootings are suicide turned outwards. you know, whether or not the person is brave enough to actually go through what they plan on doing. I think it always starts with that. It's suicide turns out with, so you can almost say on the Venn diagram that mass shooting should be up there too. But I live in Vegas, Mandalay Bay, down the street, you know, 59 people that day, and then 74. We have a huge problem with suicide. We have a Mandalay Bay, more than a Mandalay Bay shooting every single day that the media doesn't publicize. So it's important to stay on top of your mental health. And it's also important that we do so in a way that we don't create unintentional barriers for people to get help. Red flag laws, ERPOs. I come from a different world than most of the researchers. They get people killed. And what I mean by that is, I would say about 2 to 3, this is not an exaggeration, people a week contact Walk the Talk America and say they want to get help, but they don't know where to start. And they're afraid to because of the red flag law, the ERPO in their state. And I think about all the people that don't contact Walk the Talk America, that literally just sit in silence and try to white knuckle it through. And they're at maybe stage 2. And now they get to stage 4. And we all know when you let something get to stage 4, that's never good. So a couple of things, as I know we're up against time here. Resources, right? What do we have on the website? One of the things that I love and gets a lot of respect from even the outside community, the outside the gun community, is the mental health plan. We want gun owners, when they buy that gun, to ask themselves some questions, some serious questions. Like, what do you do when you buy this gun, right? Like, to me, in the perfect world, you train with it, you prepare, you understand the law, you know that you can't just shoot somebody in self-defense and your life is going to be perfect. You understand every aspect of it, but now we bring the mental health and suicide prevention piece into it, and we also plan ahead, right? I'm the gun guy who owns hundreds of guns because I've worked in this industry. I need to have a plan for those 100 to 200 guns if I start showing signs of dementia, right? If my mind starts slipping, and that's part of having a plan, whether that's my friend, my neighbor, spouse, my kids. Like, ask yourself these questions and say, like, I've never really thought about this. I should have that plan. That's all about being prepared. As gun people, we love to brag about how much we train, you know, 3-day AR pistol course, all these things. We can also train to be prepared for those crises, which is always temporary, right? But you know, you have to be prepared for it. Couple other things we do: free and anonymous mental health screenings. You don't have to be in crisis to take one. I recommend all gun owners take one just to stay on top of their mental health. I'm not really trying to catch you when you're suicidal. We will help you, obviously, but we want to keep you so healthy that you never even get there. And you're talking about your mental health and you're thinking about your mental health. The cultural competence courses, okay? You don't have to be a clinician to take it. If you want to take it, there's a lot of great information in there. It's free. You just go on there and take it at your leisure. We have a gun-friendly clinician directory. Pernell, I hope that speaks to you. We've been trying to build it. It's been tough. A lot of clinicians still, you know, they joke around, like, especially the ones that we have, they're like, yeah, we had to come out of the closet as gun owning clinicians because sometimes you do get the sideways looks from colleagues, right? But we also have a bunch of free resources on the website that any gun owner can use. Like, we have cause a pause campaigns. Like, one of the things that we say is, like, on your safes or inside your safes, or put a picture of someone you love, or something that you love or are proud of that could maybe cause a pause in a time of crisis. That's stuff that when we present this stuff to behavioral health, like, a lot of the people that are anti-gun are like, man, I love that. I never thought about telling my clients to do something like that. We also do, like, promote campaigns like train as hard retrieving your firearm from its locked safety device as you do training with your firearm. There's firearms staged all around my house. I have kids. I have to have my guns locked up, whether it's a punch key code or biometric, right? I make sure every month those batteries are checked. I run my fingers over that code over and over again so I can play it like I'm playing a piano and I'm Stevie Wonder, right? I could do it in my sleep. I train that hard, like, retrieving these things, so that time is of the essence if I need it. But I'm also being a responsible gun owner. Like, I actually don't like the word safety. You could be safe and not be responsible. Like there's two different things, right? I want responsible gun owners. Like I want them to understand every aspect of responsibility. But go to the website, check it out. Like I said, I think you'll be very proud of everything that we do. We provide for gun owners and we provide for behavioral health, and actually healthcare. And we're doing a great job of bridging those gaps. So with that, I think we can hit the Q&A.
I like that. I like that. Hey, Mike, everything you just said there, man, resonated very well with me. I love the movement. I'm surprised it's my first time hearing about you guys. So I'm glad that this conversation happened tonight.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. So, Boss, Dale, how you guys feeling about this conversation tonight so far?
I'm here, so I'm loving the conversation, loving the access to resources and the amount of help and support that people get. I'm just pinging the chat to see if anybody has any questions, or if you guys think that there are some pressing things that you want to impress upon the viewers, because nobody has asked any questions as of yet.
That's fine. That's fine. I know sometimes, especially when we do it this way, when everybody's off the screen, is you get less engagement. But I will say this, I want to encourage everyone here, if you don't have one, to try to find a provider in your area, that you can work with. I would say, even if you don't have to meet with them regularly, just checking. I do what we call, wellness checking with some of my clients who may only come once every 3 months just to make sure they're good. So, because I know a lot of people feel like if they go see a provider, they feel like they gotta go weekly or bi-weekly, but just that vent session per se, it could be very beneficial. So that's what I want to encourage individuals on the call tonight.
Okay, and before we dive into Mike's wrap up for the day, let me ask you guys something. What is some of the things that you guys think that would be able to do to encourage more providers to like stand forward about their gun ownership or their support of this movement?
Listen, I'm going to tell you that this started in 2019. We've had over 1,000 just through our website. So we have a place called CASAT that hosts it separately for those that are in different states, because we can only guarantee that in the state of Nevada, like once you take the course, you get your CEU credits automatically, just because the way that we're set up in Nevada. So like when people are unsure, we always send them through CASAT, but we actually pay for them to go through CASAT. But us personally, we've had over 1,000 clinicians go through, and we never have gotten negative feedback from the course. So when they fill out basically the thing at the end that says just like, what did this course, did you take something from this course? It's always been positive. Now there's been things that they nitpick at, right? But what's crazy is we always ask them, do you want to be listed on our directory? And literally in the last 6 years, basically 5 years, we've had about 18 say yes. And this is crazy because like and Pernell, like Psychology Today,
Yes.
I've been talking to them since 2018 and begging them to put on the back end for all of their clinicians or people that like to put culturally competent in firearms, right? Because you could select like little people,
Yes.
airline pilots, everything, and they won't do it. Right. So gun owners call us all the time saying like, who can I talk to? And if we don't have somebody in a specific area, we have to go find that person. We have to try our hardest to find that person. So who's ever listening, if you know somebody, recommend them and tell them about the need for it, because not enough clinicians are coming forward, which I completely get, right? Saying, you can come here. If you have anxiety and you need to shoot 1,000 rounds, I'm not going to judge you. Like,
right.
So I have a question. I guess a follow-up question. Like, I would think that more therapists would incorporate firearms, since suicide is the top number of, deaths, gun-related deaths. I would think that more clinicians would be comfortable incorporating conversations. Do you guys think that there's a universe where there could be some specific training or some professional development, kind of like how you talked about getting them the CE credits earlier, to encourage
I,
or incentivize?
I'll definitely hope that there will be a time that possibly the CEU credits and things of that nature can actually encourage more providers to be open-minded about how firearms can be actually beneficial for some of their clients. You know, oftentimes in the mental health profession, when we think about firearms, we think about all the detriment that we hear from the news and what we see in the communities from what's shown to us, right? So these are the things that we're combating. We're combating I guess the very, for lack of better terms, the narrow view scope that they have of it, right? Um, Against a large community like we are, that's saying, hey, no, this actually be helpful and beneficial if done in the most, and I'm gonna use what Mike say, responsible way, right? That's gonna be very important. So some of the things I know I try to do when the clinicians, they all know that I'm a prior Marine. They say, hey, we know you serve in the Marine Corps. We know that you are, that you are a firearm carrier holder and a belief in 2A. Can you sit down and talk to me about it and why? Right. So I have open discussions and try to help them address those fears. I think a few years back, about right after COVID, I took about 7 therapists to the gun range for the first time I've been around firearms, just trying to help them. And I told them, hey, we got to do some exposure therapy with you, right? Right. Let me expose you to this community and the understanding of firearms, and it may give you a different worldview.
Maybe we over here at Protect Peace need to consider opening up our leadership development to therapists that operate in gun spaces. Thank you guys for that answer. So we have a question in the chat from Chris. The question is for you, Michael. What recommendations or tools do you have for firearms instructors to incorporate the topic of mental health into their curriculums?
Yeah, and thank you for answering that. And I should have probably covered that. I just want to make sure I got into that 20 so we can get the Q&A. So I'm glad you brought that up. We have a firearms instructor course that we developed 2 years ago. We were the first ones to do that too. And I don't want to be up here like saying I'm Al Gore, I created the internet. What I love is that the gun industry, when I think of like what Walk the Talk America is built, I say it's the 2A community, right? It's the firearms industry. So like when we're first to have these ideas and then other organizations like AFSP rip them off, I hate that because we don't get credit as the gun industry for doing it, right? We had the first cultural competence course in 2019. AFSP came out with one. We had the first firearms instructor video to come out for firearms instructors to plug and play and drop into their curriculum, because what was happening is all these states like New York, Maryland, New Jersey, California were requiring CCW instructors to put in an hour of mental health and suicide prevention. And these instructors are not like Purnell, like they're not like werewolves that can turn into vampires, right? That you hit both sides. Most of them are like, I'm a firearms instructor. How am I supposed to talk about this? And what do you want me to talk about? And of course, every state was like, we don't know. Just, we want you to put it in. They were like birds that want to fly south that don't know why, right? So we were like, okay, we need to make it simple for all the USCCA instructors and all the NRA instructors, and just give them something that they could hit play, and we do it in chapters. So if you go on our site, we have a firearms instructor course that you could just drop in, plug and play, or just use whatever chapters you see fit. And then what we also do is, if you want, we will send you, we have like a package that we send out to all instructors in gun shops, right? That consists of wristbands that have the free and anonymous mental health screenings and the screening cards, right? So it's a way to break the ice, right? But just, that's what we have on the website. So go check it out. I think you'll really like it. There's other organizations that have started a firearms instructor course, and I don't think it really resonates with the instructors like ours does, because once again, like AFSP, and this is not a knock on them, but they believe in red flag laws and things like that. Like they're really into the red flag law thing. I think we as the 2A culture want to support people that kind of think the exact same way that we do. Our moral compass when it comes to the Second Amendment. And also mine is full of actual firearms instructors and people from the Second Amendment community. Kevin Dixie, Rob Pincus, like myself, we put it together, and we think that you'll like it if you're an instructor, and it's easy.
That's it. Someone said, thanks,
For,
amazing job.
popping that question in there, Chris. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm just going to throw one final call out for questions. And then I don't remember because I'm going crazy if Mike, if you gave and then I don't remember because I'm going crazy if Mike, if you gave.
My wrap up would be guns and mental health are not mutually exclusive. I think that we need to start talking about this more. I think we need to reach out to as many people, non-gun people, and talk about this. You know, don't be afraid to have really, you know, uncomfortable, brave conversations. And like I said, you know, there's a lot we can do, and we have to kind of do it ourselves. There's no magic formula that behavioral health has that you know, and this is no disrespect to behavioral health, but you know, we have the firearms instructors, we have the manufacturers, we have the gun shops, we have the culture. We can build our own systems with assistance from the behavioral health community on certain things. And also too, I want to do a shameless plug for my Guns and Mental Health podcast. I've got a podcast for you know, the last 5 years, bringing on all walks of life to talk about firearms. So that includes mass shooting survivors, people that may be anti-gun or afraid of guns, you know, suicide survivors. We had a mass shooter on 2 weeks ago, and I know a lot of people would probably be like, why would you give a mass shooter a platform to talk? This gentleman spent 17 years of his life after he shot up a school. And, you know, I believe he regrets it. He sounds sincere, but to be able to kind of pick the brain of somebody that did that horrific act and lived to tell about it, because usually we don't get to talk about it. So just check out the Walk Talk America podcast. I think it's just a lot of interesting things when it comes to the talk about guns. And like I said, we don't get political. We stay neutral.
Definitely. All the thing I can say to close out, continue the conversation, continue the movement. That's important, right? As we continue all to work together to bridge the gap to, like I said, behavioral health and firearm ownership responsibility is going to be very important. So let's continue the movement.
And with that, I want to thank you all for being here today, for showing up, listening with an open mind, and stepping into this conversation that too often gets pushed into the margins, right? These discussions aren't easy, but they are very, very, very necessary. I want to give a special thank you to Pernell and Michael for sharing your insight, your experience, and your deep commitment to making space for both responsibility and compassion. Your leadership in this space reminds us that we don't have to choose between rights and safety. Well, Mike just taught me a new way to address that, so I'm working on that. We can and must demand both. As we leave this session, I ask each of you to carry a few things with you. A good word from Pernell is to pay attention to the people in your circle. Sometimes the strongest among us are the ones that are hurting in silence. And if you have the capacity, they could really use your help. Check in with yourselves. If something doesn't feel right mentally or emotionally, please don't ignore it. And I'd also like to ask you guys to take advantage of the tools that are available to you on Walk the Talk America. There is a free anonymous mental health screening that I think everybody should take just for good measure. That's like the first step of getting any support that you might need without the stigma associated with it. So visit walkthetalkamerica.org to take a look at that. It's available at any time. And then Pernell's probably going to choke me, but he has a really great advocacy course that teaches you how to recognize the signs in not only yourself, but others. And I think you guys should reach out to Pernell at No Limit Counseling Education to see how you can take that class. It was something that I took it about 1.5 years ago, and I still utilize the skills that I learned in that course. And finally, this work is not in here. Please join us by visiting us at protectpeace.com to be a part of this growing movement to defend rights, save lives, and build a better future where no one is left behind, where the right to protect yourself also comes with the power to protect each other. Thank you again for being a part of this conversation. Let's keep this conversation going. We'll see you guys on Instagram or Facebook or in my text messages to do a little bit more chatting. Thank you all again and good night. A bit more chatting. Thank you all again and good night.